So this is Ronan Fishman. I'm Joseph Nicosia, and we are the Fishman Nicosia real estate team. We started about a year and a half, 2 years ago
As a team, yeah.
as a team. We're growing rapidly. We just got a couple more agents involved into our
So
system.
it's 100% growth. We've doubled the amount of agents that now represent our brand.
And not only agents, we've brought in 2 ISAs,
Right.
inside sales agents.
Not everybody might know what an ISA is. So inside sales agents, those
Yeah.
are people strictly dedicated to answering calls, answering queries, and disseminating information that goes out to our outside sales agents, and they go out and service our clients.
Yeah, we have an admin as well that deals
Yeah.
with a lot of our back end stuff. We currently have a listing on that one of our agents is fielding right now, right?
Yeah. Well, the interesting part is that to people that think, well, why would I want to work with a realtor that is part of a real estate team
Yeah.
or runs a real estate team, and it's somewhat of an evolution of the actual business. Having run a brokerage in the past, where each individual agent, and they're wonderful, and there's a lot of wonderful agents out there, are going out and doing everything, juggling all the balls, doing the administration, calling in for the sign,
Getting the keys cut.
yeah, everything that is required and is par for the course to service a client properly, especially under COVID, has become a lot more of a challenge because what if you had a COVID exposure or someone in your family did? If you don't have a real estate team, now you can service that client, and they may or may not know that they're not getting everything that they need. But with us, there is always somebody to step in. And in our case, we were fortunate in growing. There's 8 or 9 people that can step in and then specialize in the role that they need to specialize, where in the back end, the client's paying the same commissions that they would have whether they hired a solo agent, but now they're getting an entire team in behind them, notwithstanding the marketing that we're doing right now and talking to people and getting out there. There's so many different ways you can break that down, but people think that you put a sign in front of the lawn and the house sells itself. And it's absolutely false, because we see it all the time. We see houses that are next door to each other and one sold for 10% higher than the other one. And if you really dig into the weeds and you see why that happened, there's multiple things. One, you can see where the house was staged. Was it marketed properly? Does the agent have a CRM that they can manage, a client relationship management system? Are they targeting the right clients at the right time within the budget? We have in our database over 10,000 people, and they're segmented into what it is that they're looking for. Are they looking for a town? Are they looking for a 3-car garage? Are they looking for an investment? Are they looking for
a pre-construction even, right?
Waterfront property, and so on and so forth? And that you can't manage individually. So when you hire a team like us, you're getting a lot more value for the same money you would have when you're hiring a solo agent. So that in of itself is a differentiating factor that we can proudly speak to. And then there's the marketing. There's the things that people have to step outside their comfort zone. It's not about just sticking a sign on the lawn and putting it on the MLS. Right? There's so much more to be said about that.
We know that a solo agent they wear a lot of hats, right? And they're doing a lot of different things, trying to service the client and also run the business, and they have their own lead generation that they're working on. How much time are they actually spending on the impactful things for their clients, right? And now we see in the real estate team that we have our agents working on those 80% of the more impactful things to service the client, and letting the back end, everyone's got a role.
That's right.
As a part of it. So as a solo agent, their customer service is not necessarily where it needs to be for some of these deals,
and
right?
we were those solo agents in the
yeah.
past. So you go out and you really do a lot, but once you start to really have people specialize on the roles, like the social media content that needs to be created, which is critical for every property. Now, for each one of our listings, it's a 3D Matterport, it's Instagram Reels, it's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's that CRM, and that is a monumental task for an individual agent to manage all on their own. And it's really, I'd say in this point in time with COVID, where people are virtually looking online and are a lot more educated than they ever were before, because everything is open, and I think it's a wonderful thing. People can see what's bought, what's sold, what's on, what's not, what's hot, and then you have people are asking specific questions. Things have shifted, and most common thing that you and I hear is, where's this market going?
Yeah, oh yeah.
What's going to happen with interest rates? How's it going to impact where am I going to go? And then you hear things like, well, if I sell, where am I going to go?
That's the common one that everyone keeps saying. Trying to cash out now, but where are you going to go?
Right. So, there's several ways we can look at it. One is the things we always say is your individual house, the one you live in, is a lifestyle choice. It's not an investment. Unless you're retiring, you're right sizing, and you're no longer in need of a larger house. There is some sort of element of, quote unquote, cashing out. But timing a market is virtually impossible.
Yeah, you can't do it.
And I'd say that it's fair to say that even with the incremental interest rate hikes that are almost imminent because of inflationary pressures that are coming, you're going to see this market continue to rise unless there is some sort of drastic intervention in the form of supply. Consumers are always going to bear the brunt of cost increases, and you see that in labor shortages, and there's a lot more.
Construction costs have gone up.
Construction costs, material costs.
Materials, yeah, everything's gone up.
And you look at pre-construction in and of its own, there's not much inventory out there.
No.
But what I think the positive that people aren't taking from this is that communities that were otherwise more on the outskirts are now starting to develop. And you're starting to see people, specifically in the Greater Toronto area, look for other ways of living in a different environment. Meaning, waterfront properties 4 or 5 years ago were nice to have as secondary property.
Yeah.
Now they've become people's homes. So as you start going north of the city, they've become a lot more expensive. And as people start to work from home a lot more and have realized that remote living, they're looking for office space within their homes. They're
leaving that downtown core of condo
right.
living, and that kind of made that whole boom in the suburbs, call it, right? And now the prices in those suburbs like Vaughan and the York region have just skyrocketed. But you know what? Now with all these restrictions maybe hopefully coming back down, people are coming back down to the city as well.
I
right?
think it's critical and necessary, and there's a lot of condominium buildings that are going to need that, universities, that foot traffic is critical. I think there's also a large contingent of people that find it very challenging to work from home, especially if they're trying to work out that work-life balance, and with little kids and stuff like that, it's become really, really difficult. But COVID has made us rethink a lot of things. But in terms of the market and where it's going to go, I mean, without some sort of drastic intervention or some unforeseen event that we could have never thought of, and COVID is a perfect example. And there was a time for a couple of months in early March of 2020 and April where the market just absolutely nosedived and people were panicking.
A lot of people thought this was the end and they were cashing out.
Right.
And then I don't want to say they missed out because we could never predict where the market's going to go. But then look at the growth that happened right after.
Right. And there's a lot of people also now finding very unique opportunities in making money. Where I see stuff like that is, I know a lot of people that have bought waterfront properties and are now using that as an Airbnb or
a
Vrbo.
lot of people do that.
So from a cash flow perspective, the monthly rental returns that they're getting, that although it's a lot more labor intensive, is significantly higher. People that have never thought about real estate as an investment started looking on the outskirts where there was a lot more affordability, or otherwise they would have probably never looked at it because they needed the proximity to downtown core if they were traveling. Now they're working from home. So that townhouse in Barrie, they used to cost $600,000, is now testing $1 million. And although rates are historically low, as they start to climb, I don't think that they will climb at a rate, at least for the short term, for the next 4, 5, 6 quarters, to really stop this momentum of pricing. I think that's going to be going on for a while. There's also this factor of immigration, where the government vowed to bring in about 500,000 new people to Canada. The majority of them will probably end up in Ontario, and we're a melting pot as a country. So it's wonderful, and Canada is a great place to be, and that's where a lot of people wanna land. That's going to continuously drive the demand. And I think just the supply issue is the one that we can always point to say, look, it's simple economics. Create more supply, the demand is there. Once that supply overshadows the demand, we're going to see an equilibrium shift in that chart.
Yeah.
But over the short term, I mean,
maybe
everything
slow
else.
down the heavy monthly growth that's happening, because we're looking at prices that are changing monthly.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God.
Not over 6 months or a year. Like each month it can go up 10, 12% depending on it.
Yeah.
they were predicting that all of 2022 was going to be a 12% increase, and we've already seen a 12% increase in just January alone, right? And I can say from what we've kind of lived through in this COVID time, right, is that every time they do a lockdown or restriction, the real estate market booms for some reason, right? More people are at home contemplating what they're going to do.
More discretionary income, like the things that they would have either spent on travel,
Yeah.
or going to restaurants, or on their day-to-day life. Like, in terms of clothing, I know that, that a lot of people are not buying the same
No.
sort of things because they're not going out as much. And
The track suits are nice.
Yeah,
the jogging
it's-
pants
it's-
are fun to wear all day, right? But because of these restrictions as well, a lot of people don't want people in their houses. They don't want to list at that moment because
Yeah.
they don't want people coming in, which is going to affect supply again, where it's going to get cut down in half. And now everyone's competing for, again, the handful of houses that are on the market in their criteria, right?
I think you would agree with this as well, is that people are seeing these price increases, obviously, in housing. But where we've seen probably the biggest jumps is in the condo space, where if you have a condo that hasn't been renovated, a lot of people, there's a lot of speculation, obviously, in the market, and they're coming in and they're creating value in the place. So if it's a condo that hasn't been renovated in 20, 30, 40 years, and there's a lot of them out there, and someone's willing to come in and take the risk as a contractor and now completely redo the entire place, well, there's tons of value in that. That kind of adds to the speculation. So when you're seeing the jump of 20, 30% in some places, over 6 months, well, is it really 20 or 30% organically? It's not, because there's tons of value that's been added in it.
for
a new
sure.
kitchen, new appliances, new flooring, and people want that turnkey with low mortgage rates. Instead of having to put out the cash outlay to build that out on their own, it's much easier to bury another $100,000 increase in the condo, which will translate to $300 to $400 more a month for them over the mortgage term.
Yeah. Well, we can see even from our client base, right? A lot of them that were in that, let's call it that million to $1.1 million range, right? To buy a house, have realized that is not, they're not capable of buying a house in that range. It's increased significantly enough that they have now moved into the condo market, right? They have a big enough budget that they can actually look at a nice sized condo that they can move into. And that's what we're seeing actually in the condo market too, with that shift where people are like, they're too competitive in the housing market. They've been priced out, so they're looking in that condo market, and they're actually finding they actually have the big enough budget that they can actually kind of bully or push out those ones that have not a great budget for a condo. And that's why I think the condo market's going to be going up this year.
Yeah, we can slowly start to see it. The other thing that I find really, really interesting, that it's a phenomenon, it's strictly a COVID phenomenon, is, we've been in the business long enough to know that I used to kind of shy away from properties that had a pool, whereas today, you got a pool?
Yeah.
Even though you're going to get 4 or 5, maybe 6 months out of it if it's a good season.
Or you get 4 or 5 good weeks to be using it.
Yeah,
really.
but people love it and they want it, and they create these backyard oases that before was your property taxes were slightly higher if you had an in-ground pool. It was a little more maintenance, another expense and cost, and not everybody needed it or wanted it because they were traveling away.
Exactly, they would use that budget to actually go traveling.
Yeah, so that's something that's really interesting. And the other thing that I find is basement apartments. Basement apartments have been like that new driving force, because everybody kind of prices in there, and we're not saying that they're legal basement apartments. We're not condoning any of this. That we're trying to say that they're done to code necessarily. But a lot of homes today have basement apartments where they add another income, and for a family who's starting out and is priced out of the market, having another $1,000 in income come a month, if you were to translate that to monthly spend and mortgage.
It helps out. It helps out.
It's big, and it used to be also a little bit like, oh, do they have tenants? We're not really interested. So there's really been a shift, and a lot of that has to do with what COVID kind of brought to light. But overall, without remedying the supply issue, I just don't see how this is going to stop. But there will be communities that would have never been thought of are now becoming destinations.
Yeah.
You're going to places like Schaumburg, and you're going to places like Barrie, Now, Barrie was never a really small city, but it's really erupted in the form of growth. Innisfil,
Bradford, even.
Bradford, and it's nice to see because I remember when I was a kid growing up in North York, my parents decided to move to Vaughan because you can get a lot more value. And Richmond Hill, it was still farm country, right? There, I remember when we'd step outside, the farmers would let out their sheep in the morning. So, and it's funny to hear, but now it's a completely built up area, and the land and appreciation values are just intense and immense. So remedying the supply issue would be key. The government stress test in 2017 really did a number of
Okay, so
everybody.
how are we going to remedy that? Like, is it just going to be government opening up more land for us to develop? Is it I don't know, more farmland is going to be going up for sale, trying to incentivize them to kind of be like, we need to develop? Like,
So
how
being
are we going to...
being a true capitalist at heart, I'd say that I'm opposed to government intervention, but Canada as a whole does have a significant amount of that, specifically when they tried to cool the market with introducing the stress test. Without government intervention and putting more resources towards bringing things like servicing and allowing more parcel of land to be developed, I don't see how, without that sort of support, we're going to remedy the supply issue unless people's perception changes towards more high density living. The perfect example of that is if you look at the average condo today, I'd say the average square footage of the condos sold today is in and around 600, 620 a foot. There was a time where when condos were built, they were built as homes, 3 bedrooms, 1,200 to 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. I think that there is going to be a major shift towards those larger spaces in suburbia, where you're going to start seeing condos that are much larger, much more compact, that are going to develop communities where people that want to right size from a larger home, or that's going to be their entry point as young couples, and it won't be a 550 square foot condo. It might be 800 square foot, 2-bedroom in a lot more density in the urban spaces. At least that's where I see us at least getting an immediate impact. But these condos take 3, 4, 5 years to build.
And even longer sometimes, especially with the delays on labor and material shortages, right? And the cost of that is all going up.
Right.
I think also because of COVID, we've seen a lot of people get away from the high density areas as well, right?
Yeah.
We can see a lot of people that don't want to be in a condo anymore just because of restrictions and everything like that. They don't have access to just being outside even, right? And a lot of people moved out of those, and again, that surplus of buyers looking at all the same houses has brought the prices up, right? So I feel like the government needs to, they need to expedite the process.
For sure.
It shouldn't take a year and a half, 2 years to get your planning done, to get everything done, right?
Right.
So they got to open up more land, they got to expedite the process, and they got to help out, not necessarily the builders per se for profits or anything, but just maybe the supply of some products like building supplies. We got to lower those costs as well, right? There's a sheet of plywood could be almost $100 now.
There's also something to be said about building a lot more apartment complexes and incentivizing people that necessarily don't want home ownership or can't afford it.
Yeah.
You know, you have a lot of people that are in the market that are constantly being priced out, and they're looking for alternatives, and unfortunately, they don't have enough of those as well. Vacancy rates are quite low. It's really difficult to find spots. People are becoming a lot more dependent. You're seeing people that are professionals are staying with their families longer than they would have in other circumstances. So we do have a supply issue. Everybody keeps saying it, so we're not reinventing the wheel here. But it's factual. It's factual. But it's way beyond the scope of what us as realtors can do, because we know what it's like to be with a disappointed buyer.
Oh, yeah.
We know what it's like to tell them, well, listen, you're competing against 20 offers, and even though the list price has $1 million, their expectation is about 1.3. Oh, and by the way, you may or may not get a chance to inspect the property in advance. And we know ways of getting around that, where we can pre-offer date, we bring our inspectors, so you know what you're getting yourself into. But it's very hard mentally to prepare a buyer to spend 30% or $300,000 more than they were originally going to spend on a property. So it's a challenge out there. but it could easily be overcome if you have the systems in place. I mean, how many times have we won on 20 and 30 without having to overspend, right? There's little tips and tricks
Yeah, absolutely.
that you can employ all the time.
And that's the benefit of having a seasoned agent that knows
Right.
how to do that, right? And a lot of newer agents that really this is their first time, maybe they don't understand how the whole process works, right? And that's why coaching your clients through the whole process is so important
Yeah.
too, right? And we've always said that sometimes you need to lose a few deals or houses in order to know how to actually approach something that you absolutely love too, right?
It's an interesting point you raised about seasoned agents. I personally believe that once you get your real estate license, and I think today there's somewhere in the area of 100,000 licensed real estate agents in the province of Ontario alone.
Yeah.
I think I saw a stat, something on the Star. They reported that for every seven people in Ontario, there's an agent. In order for people to hire a full-time seasoned agent, I think agents in themselves should have to do something like an apprenticeship, like you would if you would become a master electrician or a plumber. You'd have to work with somebody who's been in the business for at least 10 plus years, so you're not making mistakes, and which we see a lot of, at the expense of your client. And quite often you can sniff out an agent who's new in the business.
Oh, yeah.
And they're trying their best, but you're not representing their needs. And if you were on the other side, you would have probably put $100,000 to $200,000 more in the client's pocket, or the other way around, right? And I think that there needs to be a lot more in the form of required education that's hands-on in the field, from when just getting a real estate license doesn't make you a realtor.
Exactly. And if you are trying to get into the real estate business, right? Maybe before even going for your license, maybe just shadow or even work for a real estate team for that matter, and kind of just see the ins and outs, because we know in the first 5 years most realtors don't make it.
Absolutely.
Right? And the ones that are struggling to get by and everything, they're really struggling. They say that 20% of the realtors in Ontario do 80% of the business, and it's true. You see it. Yeah. Even just on the for sale signs in your neighborhood, it's the same type of agent always doing the deals, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that would be something cool to do before getting to it. But I agree with you. There needs to be some sort of proper training. Just reading a book and understanding what a window or what type of roof or style, that's not going to...
It doesn't prepare you.
It doesn't prepare you enough, right? And something that we do, part of our team, we do a lot of training,
ongoing,
right?
Always.
And it's constant, even if it's just new projects, how to deal with clients, how to work offers, everything is always being discussed, and we're always working on that with our agents and our team, right?
Yeah.
And that's not going to really stop at all. Thank you for watching. Ronan and I are going to be doing these conversations weekly. We would love to get your feedback, or if you guys have any questions or topics that you guys want us to address, you can follow us on Instagram at Fishman Nicosia Real Estate. We'll post something there that you guys can type in any of your questions, any topics that you guys want us to cover. And thank you for watching.